All right, we'll get started again. Thank you all for hanging in here and being with us. And you've had a moment or two over lunch maybe to let some of these thoughts roll through your minds. Anybody have any questions or thoughts or anything about anything we've talked about so far? Okay, good. So, and as I was saying right before a break, this. You're going to find, of course, you're going to find the younger folks understanding this faster because a lot of this looks parallel to the business community now. The business model has changed from what it used to be. I mean, a lot of major corporations were top heavy with so many sub managers, and that the TV show, what's it called, Undercover Boss, is just example of that. You got the CEO of this company, and he can disguise himself and go in there and be on the floor, and it's like he's clueless. He's been out of touch. He's been up in the boardroom too long making decisions, but he doesn't know what the staff's really doing. Well, things like that has kind of trickled down. I think a younger generation is getting this better. I see more and more guys really focusing on these verses, as I'm talking about. When we get ready to appoint elders, I will preach, maybe two sermons on it, and what we call qualifications. I call them the qualities of a man. I'll spend maybe 10 minutes at some point. The rest of it is this stuff, and so what I have found is first of all, the pushback has been from older folks. I was asked to preach this in Alabama. I was in the lectureship, and the preacher has heard me do this several times, and he says we really need this here. And so I was to do 4 lessons, 4 preachers, each of us to do 4 lessons. And he said, I can't have you preach it 4 times because that's too obvious. So preach one sermon and hide the rest of them, So I did, and in the midst of, hadn't gone through all we'd gone through this morning, and one of their elders got up and walked out and never came back. I've had another church one time who was very interested in me coming, just talking to them, and it got canceled because one of the elders said, I've been an elder for 35 years. Do you think I can learn anything? Yeah, I think you can. I've been preaching for 40 years. I'm still learning how to preach. Okay. So then with that, the older generation change is hard. The older you get, the harder change is. I'm there myself. I understand, we don't like new phones because all we want to do is make a phone call. It's got 10 million buttons on it. And so the older generation who understood the 1970s, they have a hard time with that change. I've had people say, your Sunday to Wednesday meetings, that's all you do is Sunday to Wednesday. Why don't you go Sunday to Friday? And they said, are we getting less spiritual? I said, well, did you say that when we had 2 weeks meetings and we went to 1 week meeting? Were we less spiritual? No, the times have changed. So there's some general, sometimes there's some pushback with some of that. But, the reason I took the approach I did today was, first of all, here's where we are in most places. I preached 15 years at Greenwood. A lot of you knew that, up at Greenwood. Then I moved to Kansas City for 10 years. And then Charlestown Road tried to get me to come back to New Albany. And there were 2 major factors that said this will never happen. Number one, my son was just a junior. I said, I'm not going to do that to him. And I said, that means he's got to go through his junior year and then be a senior. Then I'll think about it. They said, well, we'll wait. And I said, no, nobody waits that long. And then they said, well, what's the other problem? I said, you're in Indiana. I said, I grew up in Indiana. I know every church in Indiana. I preached there 15 years. Your socks are just too tight. It's cut off circulation. You guys just aren't thinking right. And, but at that time, there were just 3 elders at Charlestown Road. We were about 300, and all they were doing was going from fire to fire to fire. I mean, it's just, here's a problem, go put out that problem, go clean up that mess, go clean up that mess. No vision, no plans, none of that. No shepherding, really. But I saw within them, because I had multiple meetings with them, I saw within them that I thought they have a heart that they wanted to learn. So I said, I'll agree to come. And I said, we'll do some talking. And so then we started the process of these Bible studies. And I mean, it was in 2 years of intense study, almost weekly going through this. A lot of pushback with them. You know, we know no church is doing this stuff. I said, so does that make it wrong? And I said, let's look at these verses. What's Ezekiel telling you there? Ezekiel's telling you that you've taken care of yourself, but the sheep are dying. And I said, are our sheep dying here? Or do you know that? Of course, it'd just be blank stares. And so, just work with them, and then, then our deacons was the problem, because it's like you're giving them the key and they're afraid to open the door now. Because always before, we would never do something unless the elders told us. And when we'd say, just give us your ideas. What would make this a better place? How can we improve things? And it's like, we're allowed to say this? Yes. Yes. You guys are smart guys. And then finally get in the congregation. So there's like 3 tiers we had to work on. First of all, get the shepherds on board, then get the deacons on board. And I preached and preached and preached. Every class I would, somehow wiggle this in here a little bit, and they just get so sick of hearing this. But that's kind of where we got to be on some of these things. A lot of you know about my writing, my blog Jump Starts, and that's one of those things that I've been doing this for 13 years. I write Monday to Friday, where I blog every day. And had I moved there, and they said, we want you to write a blog every day, I'd probably say, see ya. But at the end of the year, because I hold lots of meetings, I travel a lot, the shepherd said, you're out there, you see and hear what's going on. Tell us what's going on that we need to know about. And so I remember this was like in November one year, and I said, well, you're not going to like what I hear. Our folks and everywhere out there, they're so busy. Only time I see them opening their Bibles when they're in church book. So that was the elephant. Now what we do about it. And so I said, well, I can preach one sermon. I can preach on this and give them a guilt for a week, but that's about as far as it lasts. So the whole idea behind Jump Starts, it was only for our people. It's only for 30 days. That's the whole intention. Is that you go to your work, you flip on your computer, there's a verse. I've written a few things about that verse. Then you go on your business. At the end of 30 days, I was going to kill it. Well, at the end of 30 days, I found out that this member had given it to this coworker, who had given it to this family member. We had a huge network after 30 days. So I said, okay, we'll get to 100, and we'll think that's cute. Well, we're up to 3,600 now. It's international. And I get people say, you can never quit. I think, well, thank you. But that's one of those things that just came about. And because of our intense social media and live stream, I was telling Gene a while ago, we came to a crossroads just a few years ago that we are becoming a global church. I said, a big part of my work is people that will never come to our church building, but they're out there somewhere out there. And they may be overseas, but they have questions. They're trying to find a church. They're trying to find how to get stronger. And so, and the question is, either we got to shut this down and just do what we're doing internally, or we're going to become global. And they said, let's go. So that's a difference between now and 1970. You couldn't do that. You'd write a letter. It'd take forever to get there. You'd have to write. It takes forever to get back. And when we thought about international work, it was simply a preacher getting support, and he's going to go to the Philippines or Africa, and that's it. I'm right now in probably 15 countries. And at least once a day, if not once a week, I'm getting something from somebody somewhere. And so that, that's a change. But involved in that, of course, is costs. Takes a whole network of people. I mean, I can write, I can speak in a microphone, but I don't know how to do anything else. I don't. And so we have a team around us. And, that's part of this. Not everybody in the congregation has to have a title. Okay? You don't have to say, oh, I'm a deacon, I'm a shepherd, I'm a preacher. We got our media team right now is predominantly 20-year-olds. They have no title, but that's their world. I mean, they every day they're into that stuff. And I'll see something on TV or I'll read something and say, do you all know how to do this? Could we do this for the church? Oh, yeah, Roger, yeah. Here. I said, don't tell me, it'll hurt me. It'll hurt my head. But if we can do it, go for it, go for it. And so that, again, I think that's a gradual shift, because before, the elders had to have their fingers into everything. And if we had to have our fingers into everything, we wouldn't be doing much, because it's beyond us. But we have people around us that we can do that. And that's very impressive as we kind of do those things. Good question. Anybody else have a question before we get started here? A couple of things I want to share with you. And one of the hesitancies when I do things like this is I don't mean to imply or say you need to do what we're doing. Because I don't want, every church, every congregation has their own personnel, they have their own circumstances, their own opportunities, and their own finances. And so, but sometimes sharing ideas, we're not in competition. We're not like, I'm the Dodgers, you're the Reds, I want to beat you. No, we're on the same side. We want everybody to go to heaven. And so sometimes sharing ideas. One of the things we did early into this, there's at least two other congregations I believe have really got this down real well. Dallin Road in Beaumont, Texas, Max Dawson. And if you don't know his book, Kingdom Leaders, that's a book you need to get. It's a little workbook. And I would recommend the shepherds go through that. I would recommend you take a congregation through that as a class booklet. Kingdom Leaders by Max Dawson, an amazing place. Temple Terrace, where Don Truex is at, is another congregation that understands this concept. Now, more and more congregations are coming on board and understanding these things. But we sent 2 or 3 of our elders to those churches. We said, you're not going down as a vacation. We're going to call these churches ahead of time. You're going to meet with their shepherd. You're going to meet with their staff. You're going to observe their worship. You're going to see things, ideas. Then you're going to come back and help us. And see, that's, again, that's something we don't do very often. We on 2 different occasions, had Max Dawson come talk to our shepherds as a consultant. To this day, the church never knew he came in. He came in on the Monday, spent all day Monday, all day Tuesday with shepherds, went home Wednesday morning. He didn't come to preach. But we had some businessmen among our shepherds. And I asked them, do you have a problem with consultants? No, we do that all the time. It helps us. Well, if this guy out here knows more than I know on this stuff, and this guy out here is about 3 miles ahead of me, why don't we bring him in to help us? And they did. And that's kind of what you guys are doing here today with me, okay? You brought me in here, not that I'm whiz kid, but just to help you all out with these things. So one of the things we do at Charlestown Road is at the end of the year, we come up with a theme. A lot of churches are doing themes, okay? Our theme is our spine. It is, everything we do is based on that theme. Where we get the theme is after we sit down and we talk about what have we been through this past year, what are we facing, what do we need. So our theme is not let's just pull out a Bible verse. Our theme is based upon our assessment of the church. That assessment comes from spending time with all these people and knowing that. So this current year, our theme is called Finish What Was Started. And I don't have enough for everybody, but I got a few of these booklets I'll give you. So we come up with a title, and then that becomes a spine. All the adult classes are based upon this theme. All of our gospel meetings are based on this theme. Our VBS is based on this theme. We run a summer series. It's based on this theme. This theme, and by the end of the year, they will have heard this so many times. We preach this all the time, different aspects of this, okay? And so that's something to do. So I only have 2 of these, but the very first Sunday in January, every member gets this booklet. Every member gets a magnet. And those colored things are things we're doing in this congregation. Stick this on your fridge. How many places I've been to, we got a gospel meeting this week, but the Smith family's out of town on vacation. Didn't you know we had a meeting? So you stick this on your fridge, then you plan your meeting or your vacations and stuff like that. So everybody gets this. Everybody gets this. We walk through this. This is broken down into subquarters. We talk about, our classes, our theme, our summer series. All of us is kind of tied together. Again, just one central picture. And that's just kind of how we operate with that. Now, yeah, it costs money to do all this stuff, and it's kind of kind of what it is. But that again helps us to kind of get this concept with that. Okay, on our outlines, page 4. Let's talk about, we're in this pink box here. Let's talk about, we start talking a little bit more about shepherding, misconceptions about shepherding. Number 1, the work is a lot harder than it looks. You're dealing with people. You're dealing with problems. You're dealing with broken marriages. You're dealing with people who have got one foot in the world and one foot in the kingdom. You got some people who don't know whether they want to be a Christian or be a person of the world. And you're dealing with addictions. You're dealing with all kinds of very, very serious things. And now from the outside, you know, it looks simple. But those of you that are, you know how hard it is. I mean, how many sleepless nights, how many prayers you just offer. Sometimes we're praying more for these people than they're praying for themselves. And that's just it. Secondly, there's always a context and a background that most are unaware of. This become magnified when somebody hears of a problem. Well, why aren't the elders doing something about this? Well, they have been for months. You just didn't know this. There have been multiple phone calls, multiple texts, multiple meetings, and you know, time the congregation finds out about some of these things. You guys have had a long time with that, and that's just a misconception people have. Number 3, it's always easier to talk about what ought to be done than it is to actually do something. And that's including this stuff. I mean, it's a lot easier for me to get up here and preach this and say, okay, now, starting tomorrow night, we're going to have a meeting, us shepherds. We're going to start getting back to what we should be doing. Well, that's you know, where do you start? And how do you do it? It's a lot easier to talk about that. And, of course, number 4, you do what you do because you love people and you love the Lord. You want the kingdom to grow, and you want things to be just right. Some reminders for shepherds. I've got 9 things here at the bottom of your list here. Number 1, the sheep need you and are counting on you. That is essential. Okay? Jesus used that expression as he looked at the people of Judea. They're like a sheep without a shepherd. Sheep don't do well without shepherds. They don't have this instinct just to do what's right, follow the right path. They'll get lost. So the people, you have to just remind yourselves, they need us. And we have to hang in there and do that. Number 2 is the part we forget about. Even though you are a shepherd, you're also a sheep. And you need to be shepherded. So you wear 2 hats. You're a shepherd, but you're still a sheep. And so you need, you know, especially if there's multiple shepherds, you need to have them guide you too, okay? You have things you're working on. You're on a journey, and you know, it's not like, okay, I'm a shepherd now, and now I'm no longer a sheep. No, you're always a sheep. And so that's just part of this, is that I need them too as much as the congregation needs me. Number 3, shepherds must be united. It's important that there is one voice that's communicated. Our kids understand that. If they go to dad and dad says no, they run to mom, mom says yes, well, now you got a problem. Okay? Mom said yes, dad said no. So I'm going to go to this elder, and he said yes, this elder said no. So we've had some serious discussions behind closed doors. We've had some big differences. But we have this understanding when we walk out of this room, we're united on one voice. So it may mean we got to stay in there for hours. Okay, boys, we're not leaving this room until we can come on the same page. And we're going to get the Bible out. We're going to talk about this. We're going to look at the aspects others have forgotten about. But when we come out, it's one voice. The elders say. So when somebody says, well, Jeff, you're one of the elders, what do you think? The eldership says. The shepherds say. That's how we always phrase it. Okay, I'm one of the shepherds. Well, Roger, you're one of the elders. No, the shepherds say. We're united on this. And that is so important that, as you consider that. Number 4, shepherds recognize fear, weariness, and discouragement within the congregation. They have to understand and see that. I had a passage earlier. Let me see where it's at. Oh, I put that in here. Maybe I did not. Yeah, way back on page 2. Page 2. Under those questions on the right-hand side, underneath Ezekiel. There's a great statement in Nehemiah, as Nehemiah was getting the people to build. Chapter 4 is when the opposition, Sanballat, raises up against Israel, and and the efforts they have to try to rebuild things. And in Nehemiah 4:14, Nehemiah says, when I saw their fear, I rose and spoke. He recognized their fear. And so, again, the voice of the shepherd, the voice of calm, okay? When the disciples were in the boat, I believe they tried everything they could to get through that storm. I imagine they bailed water, they rowed, they did it. Finally, when there's no other hope, they woke Jesus up, okay? And there's a sense that Jesus saw their fear, and there's a great lesson for us. As we said before, number 5, talking to shepherds should not be viewed as going to the principal's office. That's a culture, that's an atmosphere you put before people. And so if they're afraid to talk to you, then they won't talk to you. They'll go to the preacher, or they'll go to someone else. And so we have to, again, as you go back to that John 10 passage about the relationship, that the shepherd knew them and the sheep knew the shepherd. We have to create an atmosphere and a culture where let's just talk. And you do that, first of all, by just having people in your home, going out to lunch with people, and talking about anything and everything. And some of it's just a bunch of nothing, but you're building a relationship. So that when this comes about sometime, my marriage, I think, has fallen apart, they can come to you. And we don't want to find out once we read in the newspaper, divorce papers have been filed. We don't want that. And so again, that's part of that relationship. Number 6, Satan will always try to take out the leaders. There's a scene in Mel Gibson's movie, The Patriot. You got the colonial militia fighting the redcoats, the British. And when Mel Gibson's brought in, one of the things they say is, you've got to quit shooting the officers, okay? You take out the leaders, and then people are going to scatter. And so, as shepherds, okay, you realize Satan's going to throw things at me. He's going to make me discouraged. He's going to tempt me. He's going to do all kinds of things. And so, again, accountability among yourself and being strong among yourself, that's essential. And that's part of what God wants us to do. Number 7, it is important to keep growing as disciples, learning about leading people. The followers never will surpass the leaders. And so have your own little studies and talk about all kinds of things. One of the things that we face in congregations, we don't know what to do with this. In our kids' Bible classes, oftentimes we'll have a special ed kid. We'll have a kid who has autistic problems or something. Now in the school system, they got special ed teachers. Well, here we just got this mom teaching this class, and she doesn't know anything about that. And so you got somebody like that in your congregation. Maybe we need to study up about that. How do we deal with somebody like that? Okay, and again, try to help people out with that. Number 8, leaders are often criticized and complained about. Do your best to please the Lord first and foremost, and lead the people where they need to go. All leaders are criticized. You can't let that get you down. If you know what you're doing is right, I'm going to lead them by quiet waters. And they need rest, and they don't want to rest. I know what they need. Here's what we need. And you're going to do that. Then number 9, you're an example. Don't tell others without first doing things yourself. Again, that's just kind of foremost as we deal with some of those things. Next page, we talk about developing a positive culture in congregation. This is some podcasts I've been doing with the folks down at Dallin Road. They had and that's another good thing to get. They had a podcast with 4 of us speakers about shepherding. And then from that, it spun off to talk to each one of them individually. And my part was dealing with a culture. Culture is the same thing as an atmosphere or DNA. I mean, you walk in somebody's house, and I've been in some houses where you just walk in, and there's a stack of magazines and newspapers on the couch. So just throw them on the floor. Sit here, Brother Shouse. I was in a home one time when they had plastic over all the furniture. I'm like, ooh, I'm in the museum, I hope my clothes are clean to sit down, I mean, every home, every congregation has an atmosphere, okay? Now, we stand for the same thing, but our attitude is different. So number one, we emphasize excellence in worship. That is the foremost at Charlestown Road. Gone, because of the way we do things. Gone is the day of the song leader walking to the front and say, well, let's see now. Let's sing 451. Nah, let's sing. No. Number one, that guy will never lead singing again until he gets his act together, if that happens at our place. Number two, the way we're set up, you got to have your songs submitted by Saturday so you get in our PowerPoint. Excellence. We wouldn't think of much of a preacher who got up there and said, let's turn over to Luke 10. Nah, let's go over here. And you can tell when somebody is prepared. Excellence. Now, here's where I get this. Okay? When we read in our Bible about, if I give him the name, if I remember it, Zacharias, the father of John the Baptist. Okay, is that right? Zacharias? Is that right? Zacharias? I may have had that wrong. But by the time of the first century, there were 24 courses of priests, 24 orders. The likelihood, there were so many priests by the first century, the likelihood is you probably served one time in your life. Don't you think he had that circled on his calendar? Do you think the night before a deacon called him up, don't forget, you're serving tomorrow? Excellence. Now, think about being one of the 4 men who got to carry the Ark of the Covenant. What an honor that was. What was inside that Ark, and what that represented, and all that history. And so now, you and I oftentimes get to serve once a month, multiple times a month. The excellence in worship. Get there early, okay? Be ready. Be prepared. Now again, not telling you to do what Charlestown Road does, but we have a messaging system just for schedules. I got a ping a while ago. Said, reminder, you're doing announcements tomorrow. No, I'm not. I'm not going to be here tomorrow, okay? But that was sent out Monday. It was sent out Wednesday. It's sent out again Saturday. Just reminders, you're serving. Now, about 15 minutes before our services begin, anyone who's doing something publicly, we meet in a little classroom. Well, we have a room called the living room, and it looks like a living room. If you were in there and you shut the door, you'd think you're in somebody's house. We hired an interior decorator just for that room. The whole purpose of that was atmosphere. Here comes this little girl, and her marriage is falling apart. She's scared to death to talk to shepherds. Now, we have a room that looks like a boardroom, big conference table, big leather chairs. It's intimidating. So we have another room that looks like you're at somebody's front room. I had a lot of Bible studies in there. So everyone who serves publicly goes into that room 15 minutes before worship. One of us leads a prayer. Prayer is just, Lord, may we put you before all things. Help us do our best job. But excellence in worship, that's foremost. God always gave the best. He gave us his word. He gave us Jesus. He didn't send down some old angel up there. Here's the old angel. He's getting kind of old. We're going to send him down for you. He sent the Son of God for us. And so when you get that mindset, you understand how important it is to bring your best. So our services at Charlestown Road start at 9:30. We have people start showing up at 8 o'clock. Just coming early. Coming early to greet people. Coming early because this person's going to pass out bulletins. This person that want to get her classes ready. This person just wants to be there. It's an attitude, okay? And you change that attitude from leadership down. And this leads to our very next point, and that is you're changing the mentality about Sunday. At least once, if not multiple times in a week, you will hear from our pulpit. You'll hear from our preachers. You'll hear from our shepherds. Sunday is the best day of the week. You're going to hear this tomorrow when I preach, okay? Sunday is just different. Our schedule's different. Sunday was the day that Jesus rose. Peter preached. Disciples gathered. We remember. Sunday is the best day of the week. Don't you wish every day was a Sunday? And you just get that across rather than somebody coming at the last second, coming in late, leaving early. Man, this is where it's at. And it's not about us. It's about God. We drive that and drive that and drive that. We say that and say that and say that over and over. And what happens is It changes the thinking. God deserves our best. And what that does is that just lists attitudes. You're going to get less and less of this and nitpicking and fussing and fighting, because we're in the midst of God and we're here for God. And that just helps you so much as you think about that. Then you develop the heart of servants. Again, the idea that Jesus served. You preach that, you teach that. Jesus is a servant. We are servants of God. We're not on it for the payroll. We're not here just to get a shout out. We do it for Jesus. We got one guy, and he takes care of the flowers out front of our sign. He never wants me to say his name. He would quit doing it if I did it. But it makes him feel like this church needs me because I do the flowers. Somebody else could say, well, this church needs me because I'm the one who greets people and hands out bulletins. This church needs me because I'm the one who sweeps the floor. Everyone, once they have a sense of ownership, this is my church, even though it belongs to Jesus, I have a part here. And you start having this heart of a servant. What can I do for the Lord? And it just permeates into everything. Then finding a spot for a place, everyone. Finding a place for everyone. Just we need you, I can't lead prayer. That's all right. Okay, we can't have 40 guys up there praying. We never get any preaching. Well, I can't preach. That's awesome. That's okay. If everybody was up there preaching, no one's listening. But there's something you can do. Okay? Maybe you can send a card to somebody. Maybe you can greet the visitor. But everybody has a function. And, it's that, and let's just grab it real fast. Let's go to Ephesians chapter 4. And when I think of Ephesians 4, of course, this is way after this has been written, but I just see gears turning and interacting with each other. And so he says in verse 11, Ephesians 4, and he gave some as apostles, some as prophets, some as evangelists, some as pastors and teachers, for the equipping of the saints, for the work of service, to the building up of the body of Christ, until we all attain to unity of faith, knowledge of the Son of God, to a mature man, to the measure of stature which belongs to the fulfillment of Christ. As a result, verse 14, we no longer be children tossed here and there by the waves, carried about by every wind of doctrine, by trickery of men, by craftiness and deceitful scheming. Speaking the truth in love, we're to grow up into all aspects of him who is the head, even Christ, from whom the whole body being fitted and held together by that which every joint supplies. See that? Every joint is functional. What do? I smile. Awesome. Make it the best you can smile. I preach. Awesome. Do the best preaching you can do. I lead singing. Great. Don't be the best song leader in a brotherhood. That's the wrong attitude. Be the best you can be. Okay? Be the best you can be. And so again, there's that idea that find a place for everyone. And again, at so many congregations today, you got just 2 or 3 people and they do everything. And what we need to see is there's so much can be done by others. And once this takes place, guess what? Shepherds start having more time to connect with people, because we don't have to read every support letter. We don't have to write the checks. We don't have to do all this stuff. Other people can do that, and makes them feel like they're needed in this area. In this area, we love Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning could be the governor of Indiana. Everybody loves Peyton Manning. And when he was playing for the Colts, Peyton Manning is one of the smartest quarterbacks. He's the one who first, as everybody lined up, he would raise his head up and look around. He's the first guy to do all that stuff. Now all the quarterbacks do that. But he is so smart, he could collect money at the gate booth and give the proper change. He could do that. He's so smart, he could polish the helmets. He could run up and down the aisles and sell the hot dogs. But what he's best at, no one else could do. Find what he's good at. Find who's good at the hot dog man. See that idea? And what it is make everybody functional. And that's how it should be. We also go on, encouraging an atmosphere of creativity and ideas. When you hear of members going, I'm going to be out of town next week. We're going on vacation. Well, where are you going to attend? I'm going to attend, Southside Church of Christ over here somewhere. Bring back some ideas. What are they doing? And sit down with folks. Talk about them. Well, you went there. Who's their preacher? We don't know him. And What did you notice about their worship services? And what did you see that really stood out with you? And you get your deacons doing things like this. You get your Bible classes just being creative. Now, a lot of this stuff has to be run by you guys because you are the shepherds. And you're in charge of feeding the flock. And so what is being taught is important. But you don't have all the ideas. You don't have all the creativity. And so open that up for that. And then keep the flock connected, growing, and healthy. And again, that is a key aspect of considering what the church should be all about. So the last two sections here, vision and legacy. Vision and legacy is again, a huge, passionate part of what I believe in. Where are we going? And of course, that common answer, well, Brother Shouse, we're going to heaven. Yeah, but what if we're not there in 5 years? Well, if the Lord gives us another 10 years here, where are we going? And so it's this idea of understanding where people are, number one, and then implementing a plan to develop and train and mentor. One of our shepherding classes we had was what we call legacy. And we currently have 7 elders, 2 preachers. We sat around a room and we said, if the Lord gives you mind and body and strength, where do you see yourself in 10 years? Do you see yourself doing what you're doing in 10 years? We had 2 or 3. The shepherd said, no, I plan to retire and go to Florida. I'm like, woo, we didn't know that. One said, no, I want to do some writing, and I can't really do that because I'm so engaged as a shepherd. So I within 10 years, I'd like to step down and do some writing. He wanted to write about some of this stuff. But then that opened our eyes. Okay, we have a 5 to 10 year window here. You got to think about it. Now, one of our shepherds is a huge spreadsheet guy. He loves spreadsheets. Oh, he loves spreadsheets. And so we spreadsheet everything. So we gave him the job of going through every male member of the congregation, every male member. And then we had categories. Is he teaching now? What's he teaching? How's he serving? And then we put on list. Is he less than 5 years out from being a deacon or a shepherd? 5 to 10 year? 15 to 20? Or never? You get this 85-year-old man who's a widower, man, ain't gonna happen. Sorry, that ship has sailed. Okay, get a teenager, who knows? We got to put a question mark there. But what that got to look at is okay. Now we got short list. We got guys that we deem within 3 years could be shepherds. Okay, from what we know of the congregation, we start focusing on them. We start bringing them to our meetings. We start talking to them. We start doing special classes like this to open their eyes up. We start pushing them to have some connections. You need to have some people in your home. We need to get you teaching. We need to, what you're doing. And so then you got the 1 to 3 year, 5 to 10 year. What you're looking at is who's going to take over after us. And that's what you need to think about. You guys need to think about this in this church. 5 years from now, 10 years from now. What if one of us is not here? Who's going to be doing these things? Okay, and so you start implementing the plan. Okay, number 3, you encourage others to stand in the gap. Get others to do things. The elders don't have to be the only one to go talk to somebody. And again, you get people to kind of develop a 5 and 10 year plan for the church, a specific 5 to 10 years. Okay, we have beside us, I don't know how many have been out to our building, but there's a field, and then there's a mega Christian church beside us. They have 5,000 come on Saturday, and they have 2 services on Sunday, about 5,000 each. Huge church. And I met with a preacher one time, and we were out to lunch, and he said, I'm not leaving this table until you tell me your life plan for Charlestown Road. And I said, well, brother, that's kind of personal. He said, tell me your plans. I said, you're asking. I'm telling you. I said, my life plan is to buy you out. And we're going to put a walkway across that field. He's just seen his eyes. I said, I'll let you come. But to have a plan. Okay? 5 years from now, what's this community going to look like? 10 years from now. Do we need to start thinking about buying land? Do we need to think about adding on? Do we need to start thinking about doing this, doing that? You know, how can we look at this and start some of that kind of going? And then number 5, bringing people to help. We've got to get beyond the only time somebody can come in our services is for a gospel meeting. Got to get beyond that. You know, now I'll be back here tomorrow to preach, but even if I didn't come back tomorrow to preach, we could do something like this and just sit down, share, talk, learn, grow, and that's what's going to happen. There's a lot of good books out there about leadership, and that helps us through all that. Okay, I got one final thing I'm going to talk about here in just a minute, but thoughts, questions, you know, we haven't really opened the door up for your questions about things, but any thoughts, questions anybody has?
Because you mentioned going to other congregations.
Right.
Did they do basic leadership training sort of?
We brought in, like the Max Dawson book I referred to. We got copies for everybody. That was one of our studies. We just went through all his material before we brought him in. You know, then when we brought him in and said, no, Max, you don't need to talk about your book. We've studied your book. We want to go to the next level. And so there were things like that. There's, you know, usually when we have our studies, about every six weeks or so, one of us will take the lead. And one of us will say, hey, I've got some material. I'm going to give it all to you ahead of time so you can read it. And we're going to get together and we'll talk about this. And with communication or how to deal with grief and things. You know, we've had just multiple studies like that. And so one of them will kind of lead it. But through that process, that's how we're growing. Now, we have 2 preachers, Jason Harden. Jason, I am 65, be 66 in August. Jason is about 21 years younger than I am. The whole purpose of Jason Harden being here was twofold. Number one, to take us to a level in technology that I do not understand. And he understood that world. And then he is my replacement. When he was hired, the elder said, we want you to think this is your last move. And that's how we're viewing this. We're viewing this as a 30 to 45 year relationship with this church. And we'll take care of you financially. And, you know, when the time comes that Roger is either going to retire or Roger's no more, we want you to go out and find a preacher to work with. And so in the thinking of that, okay, I'm no more. Jason's there. Jason's got this down as well as I do now. We're not going to skip a beat. Not going to skip a beat because we're just clicking. And so then he'll get somebody. And if that goes as it should go, then when he's no more, that guy's got this all down, this whole system down, and then he'll find somebody. And it's just continually. So that's kind of this legacy concept. And so, you know, the idea of Jason Harden wasn't just because we're a large church, we need 2 preachers. Part of it is we're looking 20 years down the road. 20 years down the road, Roger's going to be too old to preach. And so we need somebody that gets this, okay? And again, in a lot of congregations, the 1970 model, church hires a preacher, preacher dies, preacher leaves, everything stops until we hire the next preacher. And then we try to pick it back up. This way, nothing's stopping. And we'll just keep going and keep going and keep going. So that was part of that concept. Okay, other thoughts, questions? Yeah. Acts 14, verse. Yeah, Acts 14:23 says they appointed them in every church. I think, number one, I think the Holy Spirit probably helped them at that time a little bit. But then number two, I think we've made the system harder than what God does. We see this politically. You know, if I was to throw my name in this summer and say, I decide I'm going to run for president of the United States, first thing everybody would do is have to find something nasty about me, something wrong. So we're going to appoint Roger as a shepherd of the church. Okay, I got to find something wrong with him. That's a mentality I think is wrong, okay? We should not begin with that idea. I believe one of the best days of a church's history is when they put in shepherds. Multiple places I know of, they appoint somebody to be a shepherd and 2 or 3 families leave. Why? Something's not right. Something's not right. So again, to me, that some of that is the culture that we have to change, and that God wants shepherd. This is God's plan. This is a healthy thing. This is a good thing, and it will help us. And so I think part of the answer is that we have made it. I mean, as I said earlier, when we go through those qualities or qualifications, blameless, apt to teach, and we just fly through that, then believing children. Stop. And we think, okay, he has 5 kids, 2 are faithful, 1 was, but 1's not now. And it's like we bring up all these scenarios. That's not even in the New Testament. I believe the apostles could walk in and say, Brother Smith here is a godly man. He's been a godly man. He has been teaching, leading, helping. He's active in the kingdom. Look at this list. That's him. But I think I think in some ways just our culture is we almost resist it to finally, I guess he'll have to be an elder because I can't find anything else against him, And that's just the wrong spirit, And but I do believe early on, as quickly as they were getting them, first of all, 2 things were happening. You had a lot of godly men. They came out of that Jewish culture, but they were godly men. When we read Acts 6 a while ago, appoint 7 men, and there's godly qualities. They didn't come back and say, well, we can only find 4. No. Had they gave them the number of 9, they probably could come up with 9. They chose 7 for whatever reason. So part of it is a culture that we need to teach that every man, every woman needs to be godly to Jesus. Now, whether you ever serve or not, you have to be godly. Christ must be first in your life. And again, those are things that just got to be taught and preached, and that's the culture we have to come about, is that it doesn't matter whether my job is picking dandelions out of the parking lot. My job is getting to heaven and glorifying God. And so I think part of that is just a culture that we're in. Other thoughts? Good? Okay. All right. Last thing here, Luke chapter 8. Luke chapter 8, again, is just a great little section here about understanding culture and understanding time. Let's grab it real fast. This is the parable of the sower. Luke chapter 8. I've got listed verses 5 through 8. Luke chapter 8. And it says here, and the sower, verse 5, went out to sow his seed, and he sowed. Some fell beside the road, and it was trampled underfoot, and the birds of the air ate it up. Other seed fell on the rocky soil. Soon it grew up. It withered away because it had no moisture. Other seed fell among the thorns, and the thorns grew up with it and choked it out. Other seed fell among the good soil and grew up and produced a crop 100 times as great. And said these things, he would call out, he who has ears to hear, let him hear. Now we know this is really about hearts, and Jesus kind of gives us the interpretation later than this. But there's an interesting principle here about farming, and that is the seed had to get into the soil. Now, back in Jesus' days, over the right-hand side of that picture there, that's how they do it. They call it broadcasting. They'd just scatter that seed out, put his hand in the bag and just throw that seed out. That's why some seed went into the weeds. Some of it went on the road. He's not purposely throwing seed on the road thinking it'll grow there. He's just throwing seeds out, and it's going everywhere, okay? Now, point 2, I rode with a farmer a couple of years ago. Multi-wheeled tractor. He pushed in the GPS. He didn't even steer. It went down here. I thought, oh, we're going to run into this fence. Automatically, the whole thing turned. He had, 40 rows of planter. Massive thing, okay? He was using all this hybrid seed that was pest resistant and moisture holds and all these things. But at the end of the day, the seed has to get into the soil. That principle never changed. Now, a farmer, and as I was coming up here today, I see corn's up, corn's looking good, some of the beans looking real pretty and green. Things are looking good in this area, okay? Those farmers could grab a sack and could do it Jesus' way, and they'd get a produce. But it's not the most efficient and effective way. And so I end this with this statement in bold. Are we being the most efficient with our resources and opportunities today? Now, nothing wrong with broadcasting. That will work. But there's better ways today. And so when we think about the church, we think about getting the message out, we think about helping people today, are we doing the most efficient and the best thing possible? That's a thought we need to have. And with that, brethren, that's everything I know. So any final thoughts? Thank you so much for letting me do this. We got done a little bit faster than I thought we would, but we went through lots of stuff. And, again, I'm not the guru. I don't have all answers about this. I'm a work in progress myself. Being a shepherd now, carries a greater responsibility for me as not only a preacher, but a shepherd. But if I can be of any help to you afterwards, down the road, a week from now, a month from now, a year from now, reach out to me, and I'll do anything I can to help you. Again, we're all in this together. We want our churches to honor God. We want people to grow. We want them to go to heaven. We want to help them. And what we don't want to happen is someone from Ezekiel 34, verse 4, I was diseased and no one noticed me. Or I was sick and they ignored me. I died right there in the pew. We don't want that to happen. And so hopefully this, and my goal in this is hoping that this will lead you to deeper studies and more conversations and more looking at things from God's word, that you'll consider these things and think, okay, we can be better and we need to be better. God demands that we be better. And just start one by one. Don't try to do all this at one time. You'll have a headache and it'll blow up. Don't do that. Just little steps, and work on those things. Okay? All right. Yes, sir. You can, I'll give you my email, okay? Rog, R-O-G, Shouse, S-H-O-U-S-E, at AOL.com. There's only 3 people in America, so I have AOL. No, not really, but I'm one of them. My phone number, I'll give you my phone number, my cell, 816, it's from Kansas City, never changed it, 816-260-1257. Happy to help you any way I can. As I said, this is really the most formal kind of thing I've done. Most times I'm just with one congregation, their people only, or most times it's just sitting in the classroom or in someone's house over a table, just talking to those shepherds one-on-one. I'll do anything I can to help you. I've got a notebook at home. It's about this thick. It's just of shepherding stuff. I'm always finding articles, writing articles, seeing things. I mean, to me, it's an ongoing process. That Nehemiah passage, I've been teaching about Nehemiah, and just the other day, I stood out. I saw their fear. Wow. It's amazing. It's amazing. And coming out of COVID, how many of our people were afraid? Coming out of other things, got a death, got a divorce, got something going on in their life. Do I recognize their fear? And that's real important. So, thank you. Anything else? Okay.